One. Well, it's good to finally talk to you again, Andrea. Hopefully everything kind of finds you well here.
My pleasure.
How have you been I know you've been busy lately, just checking on your social media and stuff and traveling with work, but it looks like kind of COVID doesn't really, the bad guys are always kind of working, so you seem like you must not have a day off.
Yeah, no, actually not. COVID is actually making the work of high-level traffickers, which are usually our targets, easier. And they told us actually that we are in constant contact with them. Our undercover teams of investigators, they met these people so many times in the past that are able to remain in contact also during this time where you cannot really travel. And they were explaining to us that the traffickers that because of COVID, there is much less attention to other kind of problems, even customs and police at airports and ports are understaffed. There is less personnel. Yes, they cannot use the mules like before, with a simple trolley, but they can still send a lot of stuff through containers and shipping companies. And again, we are talking about illegal logging, illegal seafood, rhino horn, ivory, pangolins, jaguar parts, you name it.
Now, if this were to happen again, like a shutdown or something like this magnitude, is there anything you could do differently if this were to happen again? Or is this something where if it happens, you just got to have the best, you just got to be ready for it?
Yeah, no, we have to be, it's one of those, they're called black swans, one of those events that you can't really, fully forecast, and you have to, we are okay because first of all, as a company, as an organization, we went already virtual 2 years ago, so we don't have an office. So for us, working like this is absolutely normal. We are all scattered around the world, so this is our normal way of working. In some countries, we cannot travel, yes, but in some others, yes. For example, we are quite active in Mexico at the moment because we can go to Mexico.
Right.
We have other projects like Wildleaks, the whistleblowing initiative. It doesn't require any travel. It's about allowing people to submit confidential information about environmental crime safely and securely and anonymously. So that is going on. We are working on our next documentary. So we have a lot of work to do, even during COVID.
What's kind of fascinating, when you just mentioned it, but as a human race, we're all affected by this, but the animals obviously aren't physically affected by the COVID itself. So it's fascinating that they are still being poached and whatever's happening to them, while the humans, the good and bad guys, are both affected by this kind of global issue. It's very fascinating.
Yeah, but it's at the end of the day, it's crime,
right?
And animals or animals parts or illegal timber or seafood are just commodities, are products, and there are now several sophisticated trafficking networks and transnational organized crime around the world that are making millions of dollars from these products. And so they're not stopping because of COVID. Actually, like they're not stopping trafficking drugs, they're not stopping trafficking weapons, and they're not stopping trafficking human beings. So it's just money for them. And in fact, some of our main targets, we have on our radar at least 4 or 5 of them right now. They are at the same time doing wildlife trafficking, human smuggling, and money laundering at the same time. They're very well equipped to, the bad guys are usually very well equipped to go through difficult times and still making money.
Right. What was the catalyst that helped you kind of start with Wildleaks and then kind of go into Earthlink International? Was there kind of like a catalyst where it's like, I need to help these animals? And kind of, what was that?
Yes. I mean, I had, you call it circle of life. My circle was quite complicated and long. So I started many years ago with the first master degree in natural sciences. I was working in conservation with Italian Foundation forever. Then I went into business, and I launched one of the very first e-commerce companies in Italy back in '98. The prehistory of shopping online. From this technology, I went to security-related technologies, and then, to make a long story short, for over 15 years, I work in between providers of technologies and services for anti-terrorism and investigation, intelligence, and to fight organized crime, and buyers, usually governments or large corporations. I also did anti-piracy. But then 10 years ago, I was in Kenya for work during right in the middle of the elephant poaching crisis, when we were losing 40,000 elephants per year for the ivory. And I saw with my eyes how nobody was using professional intelligence to fight that problem and many other environmental crimes.
Right.
Well, we were putting a lot of money and efforts into anti-poaching activities, which are very important activities, but they do not address the problem. They just buy time. They keep the animals alive. They protect the animals. Very, very important, but they do not address the problem. Or other kind of activities like awareness campaigns, advocacy campaigns, working with celebs and billboards, also very important, but very long term.
Right.
It was actually putting the nose right in the middle, where the real enablers and drivers operate, the big kingpins, like you do with other global threats. If you talk about terrorism or organized crime or narco trafficking, the intelligence is actually at the heart of the strategy to fight back. You cannot dream to fight narco trafficking or terrorism without intelligence. And yet, with environmental crime, which is the fourth largest criminal enterprise in the world, nobody is using and was using professional intelligence, because it's difficult to pull it off. I understand, but without intelligence, without taking the time and using the right people to really understand how the supply chains work, who are the main players, who are the main drivers, who are the real investors, there's no hope to fight back effectively. So this was the trigger to I dropped I stopped doing what I was doing, dropped my clients, and I thought maybe I can build what one day will be the first intelligence agency for the planet, using real intelligence.
Right. Was there kind of a fear on your part, like a trepidation of, man, I've thrown away a great career?
Oh yes.
But here I am. But you kind of found your purpose, I guess, which is it's awesome that you were kind of like spearhead for this.
Yes. I mean, in my previous career, I was making lots of money, probably 4 or 5 times what I'm making right now. I had vacation, weekends,
right?
But I was miserable. I was really unhappy. I felt that was not the reason why I was here, and so I was kind of easy to drop everything, because I have this fire burning in me.
Right.
But at the same time, it was not easy, because I started from scratch with zero money. I had to find the first donors, and also I had to pitch a very difficult and complicated value proposition. I want to use intelligence to fight environmental crime. I assure you, now is a little bit more in fashion, but I assure you, when I started to pitch it 8 years ago, they were looking at me like, this guy is freaking crazy. What do you mean you want to use the former CIA officers to fight environmental crime? And I was trying to explain, guys, you are blind. You work too low. You're missing completely the top levels of environmental crime. They're laughing at you. You're a Boy Scout. But it's not an easy pitch for donors. It's not an easy pitch to media. It's absolutely not an easy pitch to big NGOs that cannot do what I'm doing, because the minute they will start investigating and collecting information, they will be kicked out in every single country they work with. So it was not easy to and it's still not easy, actually.
I know we had talked before with some of the celebrities, when you have like these galas, like these fundraising events, they're very specific towards, I'm gonna give $100,000 to the Bengal tiger or the spotted owl, or wherever the animal is. But it's for you, you gotta be like, hey, these are all being affected. Why can't we just do a central fund that people like yourself and people you work with are gonna protect all the animals? So that must be kind of a tough hurdle too, right? But you can't deny money.
No, exactly, because
Right.
it's the whole environmental protection sector is still heavily emotionally driven.
Right.
And I understand the reason. Of course, we're talking about living creature. We're talking about the planet. Of course, it's emotional. But when you're too emotional, you ended up using money not always for the right purpose, in the right direction. So to give you an example, it's very, very easy to raise money, even millions of dollars to, I don't know, take care of baby elephants, orphans.
Right.
Fantastic, important, but it's way more difficult to raise money to try to stop making less orphans. To go after the guys who kill the elephants
Right.
and sell the ivory and all the trafficking. Because at the end of behind baby elephants, there is a trafficking network. There is transnational crime. So if I if I throw a gala and I ask money just for rescuing baby elephants, I will raise millions of dollars.
Right.
If I do the same and ask him money to go after the kingpins, it's a tough sale. It's a tough pitch.
Right.
They simply will not feel, I don't know, emotionally enough.
Even though it's serving the same purpose, and
Exactly.
by
Yeah.
going after the kingpins, you're actually saving the. Right. It's
Fewer people will understand. Oh yes, wait a minute. We need to produce less baby elephant orphans, so we need to go after the big guys, the enablers, the drivers of the whole thing. But there are less emotions, of course, because it's about catching bad guys. It's not that,
right. In terms, like we kind of talked about that, Leonardo DiCaprio actually helped produce Sea of Shadows, correct?
Yes, and also the Ivory Game.
Ivory Game, right? And so
Yeah.
it must be having people like that who actually get it. That must be beneficial to you, and to actually have them a part of what you're kind of doing at the ground level like that. That's got to be pretty inspiring for you guys.
Yes, it's inspiring. We are very grateful. We never really collaborate with him in terms of project together, so we never receive any donation from him or from his foundation, because I guess he prefers to donate to other global causes.
Right.
But of course, it is it is good and useful to be able to say that Leo believe in our documentary and in the work that we've done. So yes, of course, we're very happy and grateful.
Recently, you guys started launching kind of like your Wildleaks, kind of like the case reports and stuff. What's the process of do you have to declassify stuff on there, or is this something where a certain number of time passes? Okay, let's let the general public be like, hey, this person submitted this information and this came from it. So can you kind of talk about how those kind of come about?
Sure. So we launched Project Wildleaks a year after we established the organization in 2014. And the idea came from the realization, being in the field all the time, that a lot of information about environmental crime and wildlife crime is in the hands of people who will never share it for whatever reason, because they're afraid, because they're not incentivized, because so there is an incredible untapped amount of information in the heads of these people. So we thought, okay, let's create a safe space, if you want, where people can send information safely, securely, anonymously, if they want. So we create Wildleaks, which is the world's first whistleblower initiative dedicated to environmental crime. And despite the fact that we didn't have not even the money to launch it properly from a marketing point of view, we immediately received a lot of information and incredible stuff. We recently published a report for the first time in 6 years, September 2020. You find it online.
Yep.
And you can have an idea of the incredible amount of information, very interesting information that we receive from all over the world, all continents. And so, yeah, it's an incredible tool. So now we are relaunching Wildleaks and looking for partnership. We receive a lot of information, and sometimes, as you said, we have to classify them because we receive a lot of information with names and telephone numbers and all kind of private information. Of course, I remember a couple of years ago we received information about a very, very prominent, well-known Kenyan politician involved in ivory trafficking.
Wow.
Things like that. And so that's why we prefer to keep it confidential within our organization. Then we have a group of people that vet information, assess the information, and then we understand with whom we can share it. So when we launched Wildleaks, we had a few critics on
Right, of course.
Twitter and Facebook saying, "Oh, I don't like Wildleaks because they don't share information with the public." But we can't share information. The point is exactly to receive information anonymously, so we can protect the person who is sharing the information, and then we can follow up with some action without, of course, giving a heads up to
Right.
who's committing the crime. So that's why leaks cannot be fully public. We do our best to explain what we receive, but actually we prefer to process the information. Our analysts assess it. Sometimes we use our network of global networks of scientists, of law enforcement, of legal experts to understand exactly what we receive. Is it something new? Is it something old, interesting? And then when it's assessed, we decide what to do. We can launch our own investigation. We can share with the media. We can share it with law enforcement. Different options.
But you guys do your due diligence, which is what you should do, as opposed to someone like the media, where let's just throw something out there, and then whatever comes from it, we'll clean up the mess.
No. Exactly. Right. We are the opposite. We don't dump anything unfiltered on the media. We are very serious about it. Also because, first of all, you have to protect the person who is sending the information.
Right.
So you have to. It's a very important part of the process and a part of who we are. We take care of that.
Is there ever been a time where you've got one Wildleak kind of report come in and then another one, and then you're like, there's some common numbers or people here, like maybe this is part of the bigger network? Does that ever happen?
Yeah, absolutely. Wildleaks is incredibly useful to even to understand things that you're not aware of it.
Right.
I cannot give you the details, for example, but we just received a leak about a very ingenious way to smuggle out of a certain country reptiles, fish, and all kind of animals for collectors, and nobody was aware of that. And so it's interesting also to, hey, wow, there is this problem over there. Let's look into that. But you have to be careful because we receive sometimes they send you information. To on purpose to throw you off road,
right?
To speak, I don't know if it's the right English phrase, or to throw mud on somebody else. So you have to be very. That's why you cannot dump stuff on the media, because you really evaluate everything and understand. Okay, this person is really trying to help us or not.
Right.
So there is a process also behind that.
When the show Tiger King came out a couple of months ago, it brought to light a lot of these kind of super zoos. And as a kid, I remember going to some, and not really, it's a zoo. Like I never thought, but as you get older, you're kind of like, man, these animals are really mistreated. Does a show like that help you in a sense that for like Wildleaks, where people can report they see abuse or something? Like recently, Doc Antle just got arrested for trafficking animals. And so
exactly.
So that's obviously a real problem. But does a show like that kind of help you in a good way, or is it kind of like does the media, like the Hollywood aspect of it, make it seem like this is just satire, this is just entertainment?
No, we were actually aware of it, and the funny thing is that a few years ago we were even asked to investigate.
Oh wow!
On him. It didn't happen because then we couldn't find the money, but we were asked to. So among professionals was not a big secret, but of course you need evidence.
Right.
So I'm happy that U.S. authorities took the time to do it, collect the evidence, and then incriminate the guy. There are more, as you know, there are more tigers in the state of Texas than in the wild in Asia. And it's crazy. We got
Now, is that a state level or a federal issue? Like, why is that allowed?
Yeah, state in Texas and other U.S. states. the laws are kind of they allow you to do that, to keep these animals for pets. Of course, they inbreed them. They do all kind of trafficking. Sometimes they do even trophy hunting, because you can release a tiger and kill it in a private property. You do all kind of shit with them. And in the meantime, in the wild in Asia, tigers are in 100 years, a century, went from 100,000 tigers in the wild to 3,000. So they were wiped out because of crime, because they want their parts, the fangs, the bones, and so on. And then in the meantime, you have these thousands of tigers in the United States doing all kind of weird shit, and it's weird. It's weird.
What is your thoughts on like zoos or like SeaWorld, or like I know I'm talking like Central Park Zoo or San Diego Zoo, where it's like world renowned? Are they under? I'm trying to think. What was it Blackfin that came out years ago about SeaWorld and the orcas? But are they under so much scrutiny right now, where it's like to the point where why do we even have these zoos open? Because there's people always kind of reporting us, whether we're right or wrong. Like, is there can a zoo be a good thing?
I think yes. Okay. I mean, I actually grew up myself. The first job I got was at this kind of zoo in Italy. It's actually a breeding center for endangered species. So they do a very important work for species under threat. They almost act as banks, because some of these animals are completely disappearing from the wild. So if you one day, maybe in 1 or 2 generations, they will be able to solve some problems, and they want to put back in nature, put back in the wild those species, you need to take them from somewhere. So, for example, zoos. So I'm not against zoos. I'm against bad zoos.
Okay.
And I'm also personally against keeping in zoos, any zoo, certain animals. For example, marine mammals like dolphins or killer whales. I mean, is highly, highly unethical. And I think as a human being, we should move forward.
Right.
Those kind of keeping in prison those kind of highly intelligent, emotional, sentient beings.
The ocean. I mean, the oceans are so vast. When you think about it, it's like there's an orca or a shark, and it's like, man, that thing's used to traveling, I don't know how many miles a day, doing whatever it wants.
Yeah.
And here you are in a glass bubble, people eating popcorn, staring. It's
super sad. You keep them in a pool, and they become clowns, basically.
Right.
And also the message. Think about the message that you give to hundreds of thousands of children that see these shows every year. The message is, it is okay to keep in a pool such an animal and treat him as a clown. That's the message.
Right.
So it's a lot of damage that you're doing.
Right.
The next generation. So I think it's highly, highly unethical and morally so wrong to keep animals like those animals in captivity.
Absolutely. With Ivory Game on Netflix and Sea of Shadows on Hulu, after those kind of come out, did you notice anything with Earth League or any of your groups you work with in terms of the reaction from the public? Was there an influx of, man, I got to check out Andrea, I got to check out Earth League? Or is it one of those things where the more content you put out, you just hope to slowly kind of build up a support system with celebrities or general public? They're just aware of what you guys are doing.
Yeah, it's a interesting question. So the reason why we agreed to do the Ivory Game and Sea of Shadows was exactly that one. So
okay,
because we, so much of our work is confidential and behind the scenes that sometimes it's a challenge to reach the public and to explain what we do. So we thought, okay, let's agree to do the director and the production company asked us, can we follow you for 1 year and a half? At the beginning, it was not easy to understand if it was possible because we use a lot of we do a lot of undercover operation. We use a lot of investigators. You cannot see who they are. You cannot see their face. We also use a lot of gadgets to record conversations and videos. So we don't want to expose our tradecraft, right? Our modus operandi. But then we find the right balance. The director was great. I have to say, with the Ivory Game was quite useful to put us on the map and to explain people more or less what we do. With Sea of Shadows, the same, but the problem with Sea of Shadows is that the film, to be honest, was edited in a way that you don't actually understand who we are. So we see this group of guys doing things behind the scenes. You think, wow, they're cool, but who are they? And our name, Earthling International, appears for a few seconds in the middle of the film, and that's it. And the other NGO, our friends, we love them dearly, Sea Shepherd. Every time they are in the film, they are, you understand it's them. You see the ships, you see the flag, you see the logo. But we do intelligent stuff, so we cannot go around with logos and flags. So it was a bit difficult to. So I don't think people will understand who we are from Sea of Shadow.
Right.
And that lesson learned from the next documentary we are preparing right now, it has to be clearer, that part.
Well, it's kind of cool. We'll start with kind of Sea of Shadows, but there's a couple of scenes where I'm always like the scene with the drone with you and the former FBI guy.
Yeah.
Just the reaction there, but the build up to that, where you're talking to the locals, there must be some sort of, you don't know kind of who to trust. You don't know who's watching them, who's watching you guys. So, like, those type of scenes, I assume happen all the time, and I tend to believe that you kind of, like you said, like to film something like this, you can't see our counterintelligence. You can't see kind of how we combat these drones, or so
exactly.
It's got to be. I hear what you're saying about that.
I mean, to get to this meeting, it took 2 months. To get to the other meeting that you see in Sea of Shadows, probably a year of work to get there, because you're getting to you try to get to the kingpins, to the real deal. So you don't find it in a week. But unfortunately, in the film there was no space to explain all that. Right. And that's why we are in pre-production of another documentary, the third one, and this will be entirely about us finally, so you can understand what we do before. You can understand, for example, what our crime analysts do, and what are the kind of experience and suggestion we get from former CIA or former FBI. It's a very, very unique, interesting work. It's about creating the first intelligence agency for the planet. But unfortunately, in Sea of Shadows, there was no space to show that.
In Sea of Shadows, when you jump on the Sea Shepherd boat at the nighttime, when they put the drones up looking for the boats and stuff, and they're shooting guns and stuff, is there ever been, and I know you probably can't get specific, obviously, for obvious reasons, but when you put your life out there like that, do you ever kind of, after the mission's over, you kind of just step back and be like, was it worth it? Or is this stuff that you believe in and that's worth putting your life on the line?
Yeah, I always have these thoughts, of course, but I always think it's worth it. You have to, it's a bit like Sea Shepherd is doing. You have to push the limits. You have to put yourself on the line. It's very easy to protect the environment from an office. And
right.
And we also need that part, of course. We know, but someone has to go there and disrupt and fight, and also whenever there is a possibility with the crew, with the documentary, show it how it is.
Right.
Yeah, on the front line. It's not nice, and I'm very grateful. I have an incredible team. I think almost every morning I wake up, and one of the first things I think is, Jesus, I have an awesome team. I'm so happy and proud of them. Take so many risks. Also, people that you will never meet or see because their identity is confidential. Believe me, I'm nothing without them.
Right.
I'm really happy and proud, and you need these kind of teams to make a difference and to show people the truth, the full reality, right? The full.
Right. So with a team, obviously your central team's great, but when you start working with local governments, military, police, other type of locals, I guess.
Yeah.
How do you you must have to do your kind of research on these people too, right? Because there is corruption. That's part of the reason why this stuff is happening. So Absolutely. How do you is there kind of like a trial and error with some of these local police, or like who's bribing who. Like there's just so much fascinating about it.
Yeah. So exactly. So an important part of our work is to, at the end of our work, or when we think is the right moment, to share confidential information with law enforcement so they can act, they can do something about it. So we routinely share information with at least 3-4 US law enforcement agencies, and we have great relations with them, and we're fine. They're doing a great job. Believe me, also outside the United States, they are really good. But sometimes also we have to share information with local law enforcement agencies, and that part is tricky, of course, because not only you don't want to share it with a corrupt government official, but also not with a lazy one, because right. So maybe you're not corrupt, but you're lazy, so you're equally useless to me. So while we are doing what we're doing in the field, and we never tell anyone when we are in a country, we never share information with the government, hey, we are in your country, we are doing this. Our people are ghosts. But at the same time, we, through our network of collaborators, of people we know, even within other law enforcement agencies, we collect information on who are the right guys, so with whom we should talk once we are ready to share. And this is a very, very important phase, as you can imagine, because if you share information with the wrong person, not only you jeopardize the whole operation, but you actually I would put my team in danger, of course. They're supposed to go back again in the field. So it's a very, very delicate phase. So far, you're not always right, and you're not always successful. Never believe people or NGOs. They tell you we are all just a sex. You fail. Actually, the more you fail, but sometimes failing. It's the proof that you are really pushing it. But usually, at the end we get to the right people, the right law enforcement officer. Of course, sometimes the problem is that in that specific country, maybe the law is weak. They don't have the right law. So they know now they know, because we tell them everything, but that they actually don't know how to do it, and they don't want to do it because maybe they it's just about a slap on the wrist. Or sometimes, and I'm very candid here, in let's say now we work in Asia, Latin America, and Africa, and I think in 90% of the times, the top levels, the top traffickers, the kingpins are Asian. Okay, I don't want to tell you which country exactly. You might figure it out, but let's say Asian.
Right.
And in some countries, they are afraid to go after Asian nationals because of economic interest, because there's a lot of investments from specific Asian countries, so they gladly go after the local poacher. They can arrest you. Yeah, that's easy. You go to the media and you give the perception that you're doing something because you just jail or kill 10 poachers. They're just poor people at the end of the day. But going after an Asian trafficker, Asian businessman with connection to the government, that's a whole different movie. That's the difficult part.
That's kind of what I assumed in the Ivory Game. When they get the main antagonist at the end, they arrest him. His eyes looked completely like dead. And but it's one of those things where you kind of feel bad because, like, yes, it's great to get him gone, but there's going to be a new one right there. They're going to find that needs the money, that has family support, and so it's very fascinating how you can keep cutting the heads off that one snake, but they're going to keep growing back, but go to the top.
Absolutely. The poachers in Sea of Shadows, for example, you see those fishermen.
Yep.
And one of the reasons why the strategy to protect the Vaquita failed miserably, imagine they spent, U.S. government, Mexican government, and big NGOs spent more than $100 million in 10 years to protect the Vaquita. Wow. This is an epic failure of conservation. I think elephants and rhinos combined don't have $100 million. And one of the reasons is that for 10 years, they focused only on the fishermen, on the poachers, and not on the traffickers. And if you put yourself in the shoes of a poacher, of a fisherman in this case, normally you make $600 per month fishing shrimps and other fish, and all of a sudden I'm the trafficker. I'm offering you $3,000-$4,000 for one fish.
Right.
How can we judge these people? I would
Right.
maybe, if you're poor with a family of 10 waiting for you at home, what I'm not asking you to kill somebody. I'm asking to fish a fish, to get a fish.
And they might not know either that this fish is going extinct, or so
they don't.
right.
It's different there.
Right.
They don't have the same value. They don't have the same tools we have to understand the consequences, and also they need money. The same thing with the Ivory Game, and Ivory in Africa. I'm offering you 5 or 6 years of salary to someone who doesn't have a job to kill an elephant. Of course they do it. What are you? And yet everyone hates the poachers. The poachers are the villain, but they're not. They're just used by traffickers.
Right.
And if we don't get this part, we will always use the wrong tools and to fight back, to try to find a solution.
One of the kind of the touching parts in Ivory Game with Craig Miller is meeting with the locals, and I guess one of the elephants had kind of gone through their kind of like their area, destroyed their crop, whatever.
Right.
And they want to kill the elephant, but then he's talking to them. But you kind of see their point of it, like you just said. They're the locals. They're not bad. Culturally, they don't see the elephant as going extinct, or they don't find value in the ivory. They just want to kill the elephant for. That's like me or you having a bear come into our yard attacking our animals.
Of course.
And so for me, I'm like, man, this is, for the longest time, I thought, man, these people kill the elephant. What a bunch of assholes. It isn't them.
No,
it's the people telling them, or
yeah.
I don't understand the way they live. And how Craig dealt with that it's very touching. It must be very kind of mentally exhausting too.
Very touching. And only someone like Craig, who lives in Africa, born and raised there, can understand this.
Right.
Because these people just want to send their kids to school every morning safely without being trapped by an elephant. They want to preserve. All they have is a small, like a field with fruits or whatever, and it means everything for them.
Right.
In the United States, we kill wolves and bears and all kinds with no reason, just for sport. Imagine if we had, wolves or bears or mooses trampling our kids or eating we would kill them all, right? Without feeling guilty, of course. So now you put yourself in the shoes of this person in the middle of nowhere in Kenya, and with few, big family, and all they have is just a field of something, and that can be destroyed like this by a group of elephant, and this is how some of them become poachers, because they start hating these animals.
Right. Trophy hunters, obviously that's kind of a taboo. Like, I know every time there's like a famous businessman or whatever that runs a restaurant gets an elephant or giraffe, obviously social media is like, boycott this place, whatever. I'm not going to name names, whatever. But is there a place for, I've read that some people will pay money to kill an elephant if the money goes towards preservation or the conservation. How does that work? How does the trophy system work if it's legal?
So according to my experience and my information, it's a kind of a lie to say that the money goes.
Okay.
In some cases, yes, I cannot generalize. There are some trophy hunting concessions very well managed, and then some of the money is used to, but you don't have to imagine, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of people receiving this money. Of course, it's a few hundreds, maybe.
To make the outlook look positive.
Exactly.
Okay, right.
And maybe to protect an area, of course. So there are, in general, trophy hunting from ethically and morally. Of course, I don't like it. We live in the 21st century. We send people almost to Mars. Maybe it's time to stop killing animals for fun. I'm just saying. It's, maybe we try to find, we really should. I don't think killing animals for fun is moving human race forward.
Right. How hard is it to hunt a giraffe?
No, exactly. And very often, they take you right in front of the giraffe. You just have to, and some others, and many times they're not even able to shoot it, so someone else has to shoot it for you. It's a weird hobby for very rich people. Okay, but at the same time, I don't think trophy hunting is the problem, because we're not talking about many animals.
Right.
They commit crimes, yes, and we launched a whole operation in Tanzania a few years ago on illegalities in trophy hunting concession, and we managed to kick out a big trophy hunting company because he was doing all kind of shit, using automatic rifles, shooting animals at water holes.
Right.
Or from the cars. It's illegal. So they do this stuff. This is illegal, but nothing compared to industrial scale poaching, which is, in the case of the elephants, 30,
Oh.
40,000 elephants. So we're talking about hundreds of tons of ivory. So that's a whole different thing.
How many operations are kind of going off at once? Like Operation Mozart, or like you got the rhino thing going, you got chimpanzee, you got it's like how like this for you, kind of like overseeing all this. How do you kind of like break away, because you really don't have a day off, obviously. But how do you kind of deal with everything coming in at once? Like how do you?
It's very challenging. In fact, I kill a marriage with my work, and because I understand her.
Right.
Yeah, you never stop. Also, because you have people working for you, risking their life around the world. You cannot simply say, "I'm sorry, it's weekend. I'm sorry, I'm on the beach." There's no such a thing.
Right.
We have a lot of operations going on all the time. It depends a lot on funding. So sometimes we are just forced to put an operation on hold if we finish the money, which is a pity, because when you do intelligence like we do, intelligence is supposed to be 24/7 forever.
Yep.
With everything. Imagine to fight terrorism from March to October, and the rest of the year, nothing.
Right.
And so that's the difficult part for us, and also the difficult thing for the donors to understand, that we need to be able to work 24/7 to do good intelligence. Usually we have maybe 2-3 big operations going on every year. At the moment, I think we are very active in Latin America. We work in 7 countries. We start working on jaguar parts trafficking, jaguar poaching and jaguar parts trafficking. And then from there, we went into shark fins trafficking and other kind of wildlife trafficking. Latin America is, it's for many years, most of the money for conservation went to Africa and Asia, and not really to Latin America. But it's a paradise in terms of biodiversity, and in some countries, literally in the hands of transnational organized crime. So it's very important for us to work there. And of course, we try never stop, although we don't have always the money, the work on rhino horn traffic from Africa to Asia, which is also very important to us.
Like our mutual friend now, Trina Peak, who's out there rescuing chimpanzees, missions like that might not be tied to you. Are you aware of these different groups all kind of, are they kind of like, hey guys, we're working on this animal. We have some extra money. We might need some of your guys to help. Are you able to kind of coordinate like that?
Yes. What is happening now, that is more and more other conservation organizations that may be working on a very, on very big conservation project. They need someone to deal only with the crime part or with the intelligence part. And we can do that and provide them information. Actually, our work with Jaguar in Latin America is a great example. It's an alliance with IFO and IUCN Netherlands, and they do a lot of scientific work and conservation, working with local communities, working with governments, but they need a sort of intelligence agency collecting other kind of information, and we do that for them. In case of the rescue of chimps across Africa, it's something very, very dear to my heart personally. It's also about crime, because it's a crime to traffic in chimps. Every time you get a baby chimp from the wild, on average you kill 5-7 other chimps, including his or her family, and then they ended up in wealthy homes in the Emirates or Asia. So in the past we funded a few of these operations. We were not involved directly, but we raised the money and then we funded. And it's about identifying these chimps, usually in the middle of nowhere, in very difficult countries like Central African Republic of DRC. Go there, convince the guy to never buy the chimp. So convince the guy, good or bad manners, to give you the chimp, and then relocate the chimp in a sanctuary. It's a very important job, and now Trian is doing this, and we are helping. We would love to launch a separate fund actually with her, dedicated to that, so to be able to every year to have enough money to rescue at least a dozen of those chimps from across Africa.
You mentioned kind of earlier when you come across like a guy that say he's got the jaguar hearts or paw, he's doing something jaguar, but then you notice he might also be tied into human trafficking or cocaine or something else. At that point, I assume you have a duty to reach out to your counterparts in other government agencies, whatever the three-letter words ones are, and be like, hey, this is what we got going on. Can we kind of pool our resources together to kind of, like, what do you have on this guy with human trafficking that might help us, per se?
Absolutely. It's a very important part of our work. It's called Convergence. So yes. The technical term is convergence of different crimes, basically into the hands of the same persons, the same groups. At the level where we work, it's quite common to have people dealing with wildlife trafficking, human smuggling, money laundering, and so on. Sometimes they launder money for very dangerous organized groups. So that's why not only our teams on the ground, the undercover investigators, the undercover operatives, are instructed always to collect information on other crimes as well. They're very good in doing that.
Right.
But then we prepare a separate set of confidential intelligence brief only on those crimes, not wildlife crime, and we share them with U.S. law enforcement that are really not into environmental crime, but these are in other crimes. And we now we have been doing this for a couple of years, and it's going very well. We are providing with a lot of information about all those crimes,
right.
And they do the rest of the work. We are just providers of information. We do not take part in any operation by law enforcement, because that would be illegal and not our work. But we give them all the information needed to start their own work. And you would be surprised at what the kind of stuff these people are doing on top of wildlife crime.
Right. At that point, they commit all the crimes. If you're going to do even if you pick one of these things,
yeah,
you might as well do everything else, because.
But it makes sense.
Right.
When you are at that level, so you're already corrupting government official. You know exactly how to smuggle stuff from an airport or a seaport. You use that for everything, not just for wildlife crime, of course.
Right.
Or when you process millions of dollars from one thing, you can help other groups to launder the money. So it's natural for these people to have their hands in many different things. And this is the level of environmental crime that is very difficult to see and understand. And this is the holy grail, so to speak, of environmental crime. So in order to really imagine to fight, I came from Italy. So imagine to fight the mafia in Italy without being aware of the cupola, of the top level of the mafia. You will miss most of it.
Oh, all of it.
Yeah, all of it, exactly. So you will do your thing, thinking, "Wow, I'm doing stuff," but you're actually you're doing anything. And with environmental crime, is the same. While you are running after poachers and small-time traffickers without being aware of what is happening at the top, you're achieving absolutely nothing. It's imagine that busting people selling drugs in the park without doing anything to go after big bosses in Mexico or Colombia. That would be a gigantic waste of money and time. And this is exactly what is happening in environmental crime.
Have you ever come across a poacher that was obviously a bad guy, but in talking with him, working with him, can they ever be kind of like, I don't want to say like a rat or like an informant per se, but could they be like, hey, like I'll tell you who my boss is. I can probably get the next guy up. Does that ever? You must have to build those type of trust thing too, right?
Yes.
Right.
And it's also very dangerous because you have to be, at least I'm always very aware of the consequences of my work on these people.
Right.
So if they are caught giving information to us, in most countries they would be killed.
Right.
And I don't want that, even if there are poachers. That's not my job. So we are very careful, and we prefer actually instead to infiltrate ourselves in the trafficking networks and extract and harvest information in other ways directly from the bosses, rather than try to recruit a poacher. And in any case, the poacher is never really fully aware of the levels above him. So, but then I know that other do it, but I find it ethically wrong.
Right. No, that's probably the right way, because now you're putting yourself out there to risk the harm. But like you said before, these poachers, they don't know what's going on. So why they're part of the crime, but they aren't the crime. I don't know
exactly.
If right. So
exactly, and they do it because the trafficker
right
is asking them to do it. It's not the other way around. It's not the problem doesn't begin with the poachers.
Right. It trickles down. You got to shut that water off up top.
Exactly. So what the poachers do is just a reaction to someone else offering a lot of money.
Is there a trend right now with a different animal that usually, I mean, you keep mentioning jaguar, but is there another animal where, like, say a couple of years ago, you're like, well, why this has been poached then, but now you're kind of like, wow, this is interesting. Why this animal? Do they just kind of, if they see the rhino or elephant or like something like that, it's predominantly people know, kind of being more secure now, do they just find another animal where they're kind of, hey, we'll just go after this one now?
Yeah, well, in Sea of Shadows is a great example of this fish called totoaba.
Right.
Mostly for the Chinese market. They were actually, the reason why they are in Mexico fishing totoaba is because they fish to extinction a similar fish in China.
Oh, okay.
They were using that before to extract the swim bladder, and then for the traditional Chinese medicine. Then the fish it got extinct, and I guess maybe by chance, someone in Mexico's, hey, that's the same, more or less the same fish, big fish, big swim bladder. Let's get into that. And I have to say, it's for when you talk about traditional Chinese medicine and in general illegal markets in Asia for wildlife product, the moment they put their attention on something alive, it becomes a problem overnight.
Right.
Because the market is so big and there's so much money, they start the day after to hunt it down, and over in a brief period of time, this animal is in trouble. That's a problem.
You mentioned, I think it's called the pagoda, or like that thing looks like an armadillo type thing.
Pangolin.
Pangolin. What is the significance of that? Because I've seen a lot of groups now where they've been around, but they kind of protect this. I had no idea that that animal is being harvested.
Yes.
What?
Pangolin is the most trafficked actually mammal in the world.
Really?
I mean, the numbers are staggering. We don't really know the extent because it's just a lot, and there is no real study on the status in the wild. They started in Asia with the Asian pangolin. Then it got more and more difficult to get them, so they went to Africa. And now they're of course poaching and trafficking also the African species of the pangolin. Again, both for the meat is a delicatessen, and the scales, the whole animal actually is used for traditional Chinese medicine once again. So it's a mix of status symbol for wealthy people because it's very expensive to have a soup pangolin,
right,
with stew, and also traditional Chinese medicine is involved. So, and again, like I said before, it became a problem overnight for all the pangolins on Earth,
right?
Asian and African pangolins. And
how do you
so again, it's not really useful to run after every single poacher in Africa because Africa is big. There are many poachers around. Like all villages around Africa, they can collect pangolins for. But then it's like you have to imagine an hourglass, right? It's called hourglass.
Yes.
So the first part, the wide part, is the poaching, very large, very wide. Then it gets narrow at the trafficking and smuggling level. There are not so many big traffickers around. And then it gets big again at the consumer level. Many people find the stuff all over China. So once again, it's very difficult to stop it. So if I ask you where it makes sense to act, to disrupt, is of course in the middle.
Right.
Where it's narrow, where there are not so many players, not so many exit points from Africa. There are maybe dozens of seaports and airports, not so many, but there are thousands and thousands of places where they poach pangolin. So this is what I'm advocating. A better strategy and the use of professional intelligence to attack those narrow places, with these weak points where it makes sense to.
Right. How often is kind of like the endangered species list kind of changing? Is there ever, when was the last animal that was on that list that got taken off? Or has that not happened?
You mean extinct? Or
the extinct list, like the endangered.
It takes a long time. Is the IUCN list, and it takes a long time because even when you don't find them anymore, you have to be 100% sure.
Right.
So it takes years and years and years. For example, in the case of the Vaquita in Sea of Shadows, now we think there are maybe 10 Vaquitas left in the whole Sea of Cortez, maybe less.
When I hear that number, and obviously I've seen the documentary, but I'm just like, as big as that is the ocean, the Sea of Cortez is, to try and protect when you have a dozen or whatever of those animals, how do you, like, it doesn't even make, it doesn't, I can't even comprehend how you can even, for me, I'm like, it's not a matter of if, it's when they go extinct, right?
Absolutely. There were more than 400 individuals a few years ago, and now there are less than 10. We don't know how many females. We every year we spot calves, little ones.
Yep.
So they are trying their best to survive, but they keep getting entangled in those illegal nets. And no matter how many nets you retrieve and destroy, they put more during the night. So every year is worse, and it's heartbreaking. As I say in the film, I had a dream, and I dreamt the very last Vaquita, because one day there will be the last Vaquita,
right?
The last one, and he will probably, or she will probably, calling out, asking for, where are they? Because it's families, they know each other, and nobody will answer. It will be the last.
Yeah, I'm kind of just always like, man, that's actually really haunting when you think about that. And imagine you or I alone waking up in the hospital at night, no one's there, you just screaming out.
Swimming in a sea that was your house for and highly social animal, and you will calling out and nobody will answer. That would be the last Vaquita on Earth. Symbolically it's a epic failure of human race. And again, it's not happening in the middle of the jungle of Africa. It's happening 6 hours drive from Los Angeles.
Which is, crazy. Right. And so, that movie, when you kind of, the team tried to rescue the one and then obviously perished, is there, and you can't, like you said before, some zoos or aquariums that if you could kind of get them in a habitat to help reproduce and actually save not put them out there in a smoke and pony show, jumping for fish for people, but actually preserve them. Is there still a chance that can still happen if you grab one or two of them? And
I don't know.
It's terribly sad.
I was a supporter of the. I know that other people were not, but I was a supporter of the rescue mission attempt, because it was not a mission to remove them forever from the wild.
Right.
It was temporarily put them in a safe space. Meanwhile, we are trying to solve this crime problem in the Sea of Cortez. Unfortunately, they found out that they cannot stand captivity, not even for a few hours. And that was tragic, because the scientists put dedicate their lives and to do that. So I felt very sorry for them as well.
Yeah.
Um, I was there when it happened. I was on the beach, but I could feel the commotion and the sadness of understanding. Oh shit, we cannot rescue them.
Right.
So now they are on their own.
And now it makes you kind of wonder if this is just kind of like whether people believe in God or not, but kind of like a lesson where, hey, this animal's out here, and as it dwindles, you either got to learn your lesson to protect these other animals, or you guys, if it's not this fish, it's going to be the shark next, it's going to be the chimpanzee next. It's just weird how the human, there's a lot of selfishness in the world we're in, and it's it's just heartbreaking that an animal that can't really defend itself is being hard. It's one thing if it's being killed by other sharks or like, cool. That's the circle of life.
Of course.
But when you have greedy assholes, it's so heartbreaking. I don't know how you were able to stay so positive in this type of environment.
You should see me before coffee in the morning. I'm
Now, if they can only poach squirrels here up in New England. So before I let you go, kind of how, if I want to say I'm someone that's leaving the government or I want to change my career path, how does someone kind of reach out to you guys? How do you guys kind of recruit? And like, what's the process for kind of joining your team?
So it depends where, because we have a marketing team, we have a team made of crime analysts, for example. So really smart young people, working with different softwares. We are actually in the process of creating a geospatial intelligence unit inside our organization. So people using geospatial data to enhance the kind of confidential brief that we put out and we share with law enforcement. And then, of course, we have the people in the field. And that is difficult. We use, broadly speaking, two kind of people, two kind of professionals. One team is made up only of Asian operatives, undercovers, investigators, and they can do a certain kind of work on certain kind of people. And then, of course, my right arm, Mark, is a former FBI and CIA. We have two other guys from the agency, and they help me to recruit, to vet people, to understand. We also have people serving as in the advisory board. 30 years in the CIA, you can imagine the wealth of information and knowledge, and they can help us a lot. So there are different ways in joining our team. We cannot always pay everyone because we are always looking for money, but one day maybe we'll be able really to. I will be able to now is an obsession to create the first intelligence agency for Earth. I think we really need it.
Well, it's a mission, an idea, and concept that everyone should be behind, obviously. But for you guys and girls to actually go out there and do it, like I like you, I don't think it's everyone wants to make money and you need to pay bills. I totally get that. But I think what a lot of you guys are doing is you're so selfless in what you're doing that the money will come if it comes, but these animals are still suffering, and we still have to do our job, and those animals deserve people like us to kind of help them.
Yes, and basically my bottom line, what I'm saying is that with the work we're doing and with this agency that we're trying to build, we're actually saying, guys, we need to raise the bar of of the level of the way we work and the way we fight back. There are very bad guys out there, very sophisticated criminal networks. If you don't play at the same level, they will always be ahead of us, and that will be the end of this planet.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you, Andrea, for the time today, and I wish you much success with your teams. And keep up the great work. Someone's got to do it.
Thank you. My pleasure.